She stood by the grand piano in the middle of a crowded mall, barefoot, shivering, and ignored. Her clothes were torn, her hair tangled, and her eyes carried a kind of quiet pain most people walked past without seeing. When she asked if she could play, the crowd laughed. Some pulled out their phones, ready to record what they thought would be a joke. No one imagined that behind the dirt and silence was a story, one that would leave every person in that mall speechless. Because when her fingers finally touched the keys, the laughter stopped. The truth about who she really was would change everything. What could drive a homeless girl to a piano? And why did her music make grown men cry? Stay with me. This is one story you won't forget. Her name was Ava, and before the world labeled her as homeless, she was just a girl who loved music more than anything else. Born to a hard-working mother and a jazz pianist father, her childhood was filled with melodies instead of money. But there was always joy, until tragedy struck. A drunk driver took her father's life when she was 14, and the grief tore her small family apart. Her mother, battling depression and bills, lost their home within a year. For months, Ava drifted through shelters, carrying only a small backpack and a notebook filled with unfinished songs. Every mall, every corner she passed, she imagined pianos she could no longer touch. Her skin darkened from days in the sun, her clothes were worn, and her presence was invisible. Still, whenever she heard music, her fingers twitched, like they remembered who she was. And soon, one unexpected encounter in that mall would make the world remember too. That morning, the mall was alive with chatter and holiday sales. Ava stood outside the glass doors, watching families pass by, clutching shopping bags and laughter. Her stomach growled, but she wasn't there for food. She was drawn by the sound of a piano echoing from inside. A music store had placed a shining white grand piano near the atrium, inviting anyone to play something beautiful. But Ava knew better. People like her weren't invited. Her skin was dark, her clothes were torn, and the security guards had already warned her once not to loiter. Still, she couldn't resist. Music had always been her refuge, and in that moment, she felt an ache stronger than fear, the ache to play again. When she finally stepped closer, whispers followed her like shadows. A mother pulled her child away. A man scoffed, "These people will do anything for attention." She didn't respond. Her hands trembled as she reached for the keys, but before she could touch them, a security guard appeared. He crossed his arms and looked her up and down. "Hey, this isn't a shelter. Move along." A few bystanders chuckled. Ava froze, shame flooding her cheeks. She tried to explain she just wanted to play for a minute, but her voice barely came out. The guard pointed toward the exit. "People are shopping, not here for a show." As she turned to leave, an elderly woman nearby spoke softly. "Let her try." The guard hesitated, eyes turned, phones lifted. Half the crowd wanted to see her fail. The other half wanted entertainment. And under all those stares, Ava felt smaller than ever. But something inside her refused to shrink. She walked back to the bench and sat down. The guard rolled his eyes but didn't stop her this time. A teenager whispered, "Bet she can't play a note." Someone else laughed. The tension thickened. Ava's heart pounded as she laid her fingers on the keys. Cold, unfamiliar, but somehow home. For a second she couldn't move. Every insult, every stare pressed on her chest. But then she remembered her father's words. "Play like the world can't touch you." And as she pressed the first chord, something shifted. The sound that came out wasn't broken. It was pure, powerful, and alive. The mall went silent. Even the guard stopped breathing for a moment. Ava's fingers began to dance, faster, freer, as though years of pain poured through the melody. Every note carried her story of loss, hunger, and survival. But this was only the beginning, because as the music rose, someone in that crowd recognized her face, and what happened next would change everything. The notes poured out of Ava like a storm breaking after years of silence. People stood frozen, their phones no longer recording for mockery but for awe. Her music wasn't just beautiful, it was haunting. It carried grief, strength, and the voice of someone who had lived through too much. But just as the applause began to swell, a man from the back shouted, "Isn't that the girl who got caught sleeping behind the stores last week?" The mood shifted. Whispers rippled through the crowd again, judgment rising faster than the melody had moments before. The security guard's hand landed on her shoulder. "That's enough. You've made your scene." His tone was colder now. Ava tried to stand, but the piano bench tipped slightly and her music sheet scattered across the polished floor. Laughter returned, cruel and cutting. Then a familiar voice echoed from the crowd. An older man stepped forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Ava?" He wore a suit, his hair gray at the edges. Her father's old friend, a music teacher who had once promised to mentor her. His face went pale. "You're Daniel Carter's daughter." Gasps filled the mall. Some lowered their phones, realizing what they had done. The guard froze mid-motion. The man's voice trembled. "This girl was accepted into Juilliard before the accident. She was one of the youngest pianists they'd ever considered." The silence that followed was heavier than any applause. The crowd that once mocked her now looked at her with guilt, some whispering, others avoiding eye contact. Ava stood there, tears glistening in her eyes, not from shame, but from something deeper. Because at that moment, every note she had played wasn't just music. It was proof that talent, soul, and worth have no home, no color, and no price tag. And as the mall stood still, one truth echoed louder than her final note. Sometimes it takes being humiliated to finally be heard. Ava didn't stay at the mall that day. She gathered her papers, thanked the old teacher quietly, and walked away, head high, steps steady. But something had shifted. For the first time in years, she wasn't invisible anymore. The video of her playing spread online within hours. Millions watched, and soon the same world that had laughed at her was praising her genius. Offers came. Music schools, interviews, sponsors. But Ava didn't chase fame. Instead, she used her story to speak about what really mattered. In every speech, she reminded people that talent doesn't wear designer clothes, and potential doesn't live in a certain ZIP code. She talked about how prejudice, not poverty, had nearly silenced her gift. The same mall that once threw her out later hosted a concert in her name, where Ava played the same piano that had once been off limits. Only this time, the sign beside it read, "Everyone is welcome to play." Her journey became more than music. It became a mirror, reflecting how society sees those who look less than, how easily people mistake hardship for worthlessness. And maybe that's the real lesson. How many voices have we ignored? How many prodigies have we walked past because they didn't look the part? Ava's story isn't just hers. It's a reminder that behind every face you overlook might be a melody the world desperately needs to hear. So next time you see someone the world has forgotten, ask yourself, what if their silence hides a song? If this story moved you, don't let it end here. There are so many Avas out there, people with extraordinary gifts, silenced by judgment and circumstance. Share this video so their voices can be heard too. Leave a comment below. What did you feel when Ava started to play? And if you believe everyone deserves a chance no matter where they come from, hit that like button. It tells the world these stories matter. Subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories that open eyes, heal hearts, and remind us that compassion is stronger than prejudice. Because sometimes, one story is all it takes to change the way we see each other.